before opening the discussion, we have at least 15 minutes. I would like to say that the word crisis is one of my very favorite. Very simply because, well, normally in English, we understand crisis as an emergency with a lot of negative connotations. But in Greek language, where crisis originally comes from, Stephen, you have crisis is a word that in reality speaks about three different concepts. Yes, one is the European, this emergency with a lot of connotations. But at the same time, please do not forget that krisis in Greek means also judgment. And we are all judged because of the crisis, the refugee crisis. We are all judged, and Europe in general, and what we like to call European cultural values, which is something that does not exist, is judged. And the third concept that the Greek word crisis speaks about is the critical thinking. So, which means that the refugee crisis gives us an opportunity to think critically, not to be judged by the future generations. That's why I keep using the word crisis, because I believe that we are still in a very, very, very deep crisis, particularly when it comes to humanitarian values and the European civilization. So, I hope our lovely assistants can go around with the microphones, and please let's have some dialogues. Let's have some discussion.
Already. Good morning, everybody. Stelios Dimopoulos from the National Center for Scientific Research, Dimokritos, in Athens, Greece. I have a few questions to the different speakers. First of all, thank you very much for the lovely interventions. I would start from the first speaker, who basically advocated that we need a totally different societal model, but I think failed to suggest one. And I would like to ask him if he has any idea of what this new social model should be that will be better than what we have today. The second question goes to the second speaker, and I'd like to ask him two questions. How did he or the group who ran Kukula select the refugees on board this project? Because apparently there were a lot of candidates, and how you went about selecting the ones who participate in the program. And the second is, why wasn't the Kukula project financially sustainable? I mean, what would it take to make it financially sustainable? Okay. The fourth question, or third group of questions, goes to Andrea, and I would like to ask her if she sees any danger with with creating ethnic islands, digital islands, through these digital applications, alienating future generations of the particular ethnic group. Not the zero generation, because the zero generation is the one who wants to be integrated, but the future generations that were through this digital isolation feel also alienated ethnically in the future, or culturally as well. And I think it's the last question, sorry about that, goes to Maria. And I would like to ask her, what does he suggest as a mechanism for building sustainably, or rather put it differently, a sustainable trust mechanism, trust building mechanism apart from dialogue, because just dialogue opens up the opportunity, but is not enough for building trust. Thank you.
If I have understood you well with the new social model, I want to say that the situation here, it is an expression that the local society is not ready to discuss a new social model. We are a few people from here, and we are discussing about the problem of refugee crisis in Lesbos, and the interaction with the society, with the local society about this issue is very, very shallow. What is the problem? The problem is that society is organized on some traditional concepts, and it is not ready to understand or to accept a new population with other cultural and social stances. But this society is also in crisis, and he can use this new population as a form, as an opportunity for reorganization of production, of communication and culture. This is very important, and this is the new social model. What it means for a European society, although Lesbos and Greece is in crisis, it's also a very rich society. And the sharing of resources between first world and third world, it is on this line here. We see here the problem of the people that are coming, they are asking for a better life, because we have a better life. But how we can do this, to have these people here, to give them a better life, and to have also an opportunity to make our life also better. I think this is an important issue of social innovation. To introduce these people to our society, to give them education, to give them opportunities, if it's possible to stay here, or if they want to go back, to have the resources to go back to their society with the resources of our society. This is a quality to introduce a link between the host societies in Europe, the societies of the refugees, and if they have the ability to come back sometime, to introduce the innovation there, and to have the opportunity to share resources of the first world and the third world. This is not a problem that you can solve on Lesbos level, on the European level only. This is something that is very important. I think this is a new social model that Mohammed now, we can say, I'm coming here for a better life, but I like also to have a better life also in Iran, if Iran is better, of course.
Does have a problem in Iran.
Yes, I understand, yes.
Anybody don't have a problem.
But how you can stay here and you to be happy here and to have the opportunity to be in relation to your to country of origin, and to give to them the networks and the abilities to gain something from us, and to have also to gain something also from you. This exchange, I think, it is the basis for a new social model. Cannot solve the problem with camps, with isolation, with money, only with money, not at all, because money is redistributed to the people that already they have money here in Europe. The enterprises, they have the ability to gain the money for the refugees. Some politicians, they gain the glory, and all the people, they have already the opportunities. At this time, they gain the opportunities from the refugees, not the people that are at the edge of society. This is in Lesbos, in Athens, in Idomeni, and I want to say to Maria, I have lived for 2.5 weeks in Idomeni. This was a self-organized society. I can give you a video about this living in Idomeni. We have lived there 2 weeks. Many young people from everywhere from Europe, they came there and say, why we are coming here in Idomeni? They say, because I'm looking for a meaning of life. And how we can have this meaning of life in Idomeni, in this terrible situation? Because here is the opportunity to exchange ideas, to prove my ability to be a human being, and to also to organize my life. And I want to give you this video because this is the time in the March of 2015, and it is the first days as the first sunny days in the Idomeni. And some people, they are also my students, they are telling, you are alive here, you are showing here a happy life in Idomeni. Yes, the people, they had happy life also in Idomeni because they have they were self-organized, they have playing football as the kids, they have cooked their foods alone with volunteers without the state's bureaucratic system, and also, of course, they help from some very important NGOs organization. This was the opportunity. I think the idea is that the camps have to end, self-organization and redistribution of the people, sharing resources, let the people to have unused resources of housing in Lesbos. Thousands of houses, hundreds of villages are remote, alone, without life. We can introduce life with these people there if we want. If we don't want, and also to give also the opportunity of jobs to young people, Greek young people that are unemployed. This is the opportunity. This is perhaps, I'm used a long time to answer, but this is perhaps a social model.
Thank you. Next question was to Sebastian.
Does it work? Yes. Okay, I think you asked me how we select the participants in the project Kukula. So first of all, like in the most projects, they come out of a dialogue with participants. So this is the first step. So there was no selection because there was no project before we started to work on the furnitures together. So we started with these 5, and so after today we know that Kukula is not a model which you can just place everywhere. It really depends on every single participant and his story, and most of all on his own engagement in the try to get a legal status. And then if there's this engagement, and then there is a possibility, but it's really a one-to-one thing from each one to another. And most of them, they are coming from other projects. We have different projects, and some are just for doing something while waiting in a way, and some are like this for a way into society. So we know, have an overview of a lot of people, young people, and so there's a way like this into. Second question about the sustainability, financial sustainability of Kukula and how to create this. I can say, and I think it's really good that you're asking this, because it's important to know that even Kukula, with its enormous media presence and supporters, and the license of Enzo Mari, which is exclusive for refugees, design classics to selling, and a lot of supporters, who even designers who try to create new products for Kukula. It's extremely difficult to earn enough money to run this company. Until yet, I think it's 50% we earn by selling stuff. Another 50% is by donations and fundings, which is, on the one side, I think it's okay. In Germany, we have a system where education is for free. So because we have the education part and the company part, I think it's a quite good model on the one hand. On the other hand, I think it doesn't need to be completely sustainable. I mean, it would be perfect if it could be, but our experience is that it's nearly impossible. I mean, if anybody can make it, I'm happy to hear how it is. But I think the picture and that it creates an income is one of the main reasons of bridging into society. Because, I mean, like we all know, for example, in Germany, but I think all over Europe, there's this, the people are afraid that people coming to our society and taking something from our money and everything. So to creating this picture that there are people who work and do something and create their own incomes is bridging, and that's our our experience that it's bridging into even conservative parts of the society. Yeah, I think so. I mean, bridging, for me, bridging is first of all a positive thing, because the people get in touch with the project and they buy something, or they even like it. They like the picture of, that's really the experience that, for example, really conservative newspapers were writing about the project in a really positive way, and they would never have write in a positive way about a project which looks for just donations, you know. So the combination of this picture of the guys working for their lives and create their own income, and they just want to build furnitures in a way, you know. For sure, it's much more political. They want to be part of the society, but with this picture, they were writing quite positive, and I think for me this is a very positive way of bridging, which is, in the end, hopefully bringing them closer together to really understand what's the point and perhaps shift something in these conservative parties.
Thank you. And the next question was Maria.
Yeah, if I got your question right, it was about kind of ethnic gathering in self-organizations and how to make sure they are part of or become part of society and not some kind of parallel world. So a friend of mine published an interesting article during the World Football Cup. It was a little bit provocative. It spoke about the German football team in Brazil in the mid-20th century. And it even had some German names, something connected to Hamburg, and it was only a German team. So I think this tendency of gathering after or following nationality or ethnic is something quite natural, because you have similar experience, especially considering refugees, maybe similar war experience. You have similar experiences of culture classes in the receiving society. You have maybe similar interests towards your home country. And so I think, first of all, considering media and the media use, media competence should be transmitted that sensibilizes for media as a tool where you can articulate your voice towards, or your interests towards society. It's a space. It can be a space of interacting. Then a part of media, I would say, make access for those groups as easy as possible to society. In Germany, for example, it's quite difficult, it's kind of difficult to found an association, an eingetragener Verein, how we say. And often resources are limited, financial support is limited to those groups who who formally exist. So how first of all maybe support them to be formalized and to be visible also by that, but on the other hand, how to accompany this process and how to be more flexible in working with any group. Also how to lower bureaucracy stuff.
Thank you, Maria. Andrea.
So the final question about the trust thing, which is I think it's very context dependent as well. But I think first of all, I think it's very necessary here, because we also heard yesterday the reflection what happened to Brexit and what kind of institutional ways it can take other ways if you don't articulate the issues. And as I saw in my interviews, there is huge rupture. And I think it's a stepwise thing. So what I said, start small and grow it. So in the beginning, it might be just as encounters. I mean, we have like neighbors celebrating Christmas together who don't talk to each other anymore in some of the villages here on the island. try I think transparency is one thing as well, but when you look into negotiation theory and conflict theory, there are different approaches you can take. For example, one sense what I experienced myself in a project which was called Post-Conflict Futures, which we did with Syrian refugees in Sweden, with scholars, which also was done in Colombia and also in South Africa after the apartheid, was to use scenarios. And I think what is lacking here on the vision on the island is also a joint vision for the island, and how you, with the different conflicts and situation, can actually find a common future. For me, I think a scenario project where people, both refugees, and they have representatives. It's not like there is a walkthrough anymore, like it was. So you have really representatives for refugees as well. You have representatives from the southern part of the island, from the northern part of the island, yet that you try to look, not a prejudgment, but you do a scenario method where you develop four, like they did in South Africa, with 4 possible futures. So it's not which is the most plausible to happen, you look causally which could happen. And afterwards you think about how, if we have a common future, how can we align ourselves, and how can we find skills and empower ourselves, what can I do to contribute to that future? And for me, so in one sense, I mean, it's always the question also, how large can you do it? And you also have the issue of the people participating in such, who are they, who would participate in such an attempt? But I think, like in South Africa, it was also the university. There was a professor from the university who started such an initiative. And even if it wasn't perfect with the situation in South Africa at the time being, I think it was something which made that they didn't come to a civil war. So how you do it, and I think like afterwards, if you have like a group of representatives for developing this kind of scenarios of possible futures, then after you, of course, you have to go out and to get the stories out that people can align themselves to these futures. So this is where I also see that media, and afterwards you can make a communication strategy. How do you get that out? But as I said, first of all, start small, and then try to find a common vision on the island. Because as we said, there's some people who see the opportunities of the diversity with having refugees coming to the islands, and other ones put their shelters on and say, this is only a problem. So I think that's where you have to reframe the problem as well, or the issue as well.
Thank you, Andrea. Friedrich, please. It takes a couple of seconds.
Oh yeah, I use this. Okay, I mean, we're trying to identify social innovations, and when I saw the picture, the slide on the Lebanese refugee camp where you worked, this connected to a report that I saw in Germany about a British group working somewhere in Greece who denies sort of, or who is strictly against any kind of what one might call a bureaucratic way of taking care, providing for the refugees. So they provide some material and you know, let the refugees work for themselves. For instance, I mean, they are sleeping in tents. Why couldn't you provide, you know, wood and you know, perhaps some assistance for carpeting or house building, but let them build a better house or something similar to a house instead of being in the tent during the winter. I mean, the question is, for instance, in Germany we have a totally bureaucratic approach. We have the well-organized, well-funded social welfare organizations who provide for almost everything. But what you did in the Lebanese camp was, you know, you showed them, you motivated them to separate the water lines from the electricity. So the question is, you know, what are the limits to such an approach? I mean, I'm not totally against bureaucratic organizations, they are necessary, but what are the limits according to your experience, and how much kind of bureaucratic or assistant would you help? But this would be, I think, an innovation when you start thinking about using, and this is what all of you in one way or another have said, how can the refugees be agents, yeah? But the question is, how far can you go, and where are the limits? Where should the state or bureaucratic organizations come in?
Just a comment to the last one. I think that one of the things, there was a comment yesterday, which is, I believe, well-intended, but when it comes to, well, let's just get money in here, let's just do something, let's do that, and it's a very good idea. We have to remember that people who've been on the ground, we've been counting and recounting and blankets and numbers of people, and we have to remember, and this is one of the challenges the UNHCR had to face, they're used to going on to third world countries and saying, we can just build a huge camp. The difference is this crisis happened in Europe, and so while I am totally for the engagement of people, the refugees themselves would not be able to build wooden houses because there are laws that are followed, there's private property, there is controls, because we're in a European country, which is totally different than if we're going into a third world country for this. And so I believe in, again, let's say you want to say direct action, engaging and making agents out of the refugees, giving them an opportunity, but there's so many things that would not legally, that would not allow them to just go and take over a factory, build wooden houses instead of tents. It would never be allowed. And so we also have to, keeping that in mind, that there's an entirely different legal structure that has to be followed in order to change. We cannot go in to Moria and change Moria. We just can't do it. If we started building wooden houses, they would be torn down very quickly. Ask by whom? By some of the authorities. Okay, there's already been tents that have been torn. Back in 2016, there was something called Better Days for Moria. It was built up, and then they were asked to leave. It's been built up again, but if any structures, there's legal things on what type of structure you can live, if you're allowed to have electricity in there, and if you're allowed to have water, and what type of properties you're allowed to have those resources, public services, and some of them were then cut off because they were essentially illegal housing areas.
Was it because it would give a kind of a sense of permanency? Because, to comment to both of you, I believe that one of the main problems we have is exactly that we are still in the phase of denial. We still believe that in a magical way or a metaphysical way, refugees and migrants will disappear tomorrow. And we still believe that if we go for permanent or long-term solutions, we will eternalize the problem somehow. But people have to understand, on Lesbos as well, this is not for today and tomorrow. We will have the same thing for at least 15 to 20 years. We like it or not, they like it or not. So that's the problem, that we don't want to accept that, I believe. And anything that gives this understanding or this notion of doing things permanent is not to be accepted. This is, I believe, why the local society is very skeptical in anything else. And I wouldn't be surprised if it would be the local authorities that destroyed everything.
Yeah, I mean, I remember these discussions at the very beginning in the local town council in Skamia. What they're saying, they said, well, we'd like to allow a camp to open, but it has to look as least permanent as possible. Please just put a tent or two. And we need to put a rub hall and RHUs, which is really in order to provide more dignified help. But their thing was, we want to be able to take them down in a day. we want it to be gone as soon as possible. And again, it's not just the authorities and the legal issues, it's that you can have the more permanent it looks, the more I believe the local community, just local non-politicians, nor just that they feel that it's something that they don't want anymore. They want it to go away, and I totally agree with you. We are in denial of the situation and how it will be in the years to come.
But if it's a lot, local societies, they are feeling as refugee carriers. They are not feeling as host communities because the state, European Union, other states, European states, they are pushing the problem around and say there are some carriers there, let them for a while and then perhaps they disappear. They will not disappear, but it's not a problem if they disappear or not. They are not ready, the institutions and the state, modern state that we have, to understand that the camp, it is the only solution that the bureaucracy can give. The society can give other solutions. And how the society can give other solutions if they find opportunities on this solution, not as not a moralistic basic of human rights. It's very good, but this is not an opportunity. An opportunity is to have opportunities for jobs, investment, and production. This is very simple. This means that the society, local society, has to local society with a new law system and perhaps new forms of city planning. To innovate city planning that can introduce new population on the cities, on the villages, and everywhere, not this old-fashioned system. Second, new opportunities and legal opportunities to allow co-housing in some system, and to investment in housing and paying for this, not to give the money around to buy millions and thousands of boxes and plastic boxes, but to organize a form of housing that is human and that the people can be introduced to this. In Greece, all cities has been built by the people themselves, are not after a big planning. This is something that can reinvent also. And third is to have a legal system and investment that allows co-financing of enterprises between refugees, migrants, local population to push these opportunities. This is, I think it's very simple to find solution, but you have to innovate your thought first before you innovate your smartphones. Yes.
Maria, and then Stelios, and then coffee.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think this is not a special situation for Lesbos. Like what you also said in the beginning, we are still in crisis somehow, and one can see that there are debates about enlarging the not allowance of, for example, in Germany, the family reunification and all that. So I think all this discussion about thinking or treating the situation like it's going a situation to be over, it's something that you find all over Europe. Because, yeah, one found out that the Dublin system doesn't work, but still there's not a real change, but there's just one is trying to make it better, but it's still the Dublin system. So I would propose that actually this Lesbos Dialogues could be a room of raising awareness for the larger future and for having sustainable discussions on how these challenges in Europe can be handled.
Okay. The first speaker, sorry, I referred to you as the first speaker because I didn't catch your name, but I should have read that. Sotiris. Sotiris has mentioned the first and probably one of the biggest experiments in handling such a kind of crisis, which was the 1922 separation of the Orthodox Turkish population in Minor Asia from the Muslim, and the massive migration of about 1.5 million, if I remember well, people to Greece. And funny thing, back then it was exactly the same situation, because this migration coincided with one of the biggest financial crises in Greece that followed the defeat of the Greek expansionist idea in Minor Asia. And back then, a poor state that devastated by a war, Greece was able to manage the crisis, not easily. It started with tents and people living in slums, but there was a decision that these people were there to stay and to be integrated in the local population. And the difference between then and now is the fact that those who were Christian population that universally were accepted by the locals, and albeit the fact that they were called Turkicides, right? So they were not called Greeks for about one generation, and some even still jokingly call them as such today. So I agree 100% with Apostolos that we are in the face of denial. We are not sure if these people are here to stay or not. If we make the decision that these people are here to stay, there is a blueprint already used successfully, because as you mentioned, this segment of population revitalized the entire Greek society in terms of financially, culturally, politically, in all kinds of different ways. So I presume that this could be a blueprint, and if we want to find a space to build these houses, again, there is an experience. The state has confiscated back then land that were owned by local people. It was given to the migrants to start the building. My family had lost a vast amount of land, lost in the good sense probably, because it was confiscated. And as a result, these people were able to start their lives and flourish. So I think the blueprint is there. Right, but unfortunately, history comes back when it repeats itself as a joke. And it comes back, and instead of us learning the lessons and using it, we are just trying to reinvent the wheel. But I guess you're right about it. First, to get out of this denial phase, make a decision that this is a problem that may last, I don't know how long, but it is a problem. It's also probably a necessity for Europe that is in genetic decline to have these people come in. And I do not agree with charity-like social integration in houses, etc. I fully support of, I don't know if anybody, how many of you are familiar with the Bolsa project in Brazil, probably the biggest successful project that moved 17 million people out of the slums into the mainstream society. And this was done by giving allowances, money directly to women, okay, not men, the families money, and then that's how they were brought out. And unfortunately, Europe took certain technical.
That's right.
Quite some years to come up with this simple idea. Again, the blueprint was there, but they were trying to give the money to the NGOs. Sorry, I don't offend anybody here. The NGOs have their role, but or giving to centralized government instead of giving the allowance directly. And when they discover that, people all of a sudden start feeling normal, and the local tensions start somehow being normalized. So the blueprints are there.
Can I tell something to this sort of I fully agree with you, and I want to tell you, Greece is better off than Germany in the refugee crisis because well-organized countries with bureaucracy are not ready to reform. Countries with big informal economy and great flexibility can easily introduce integrate people that are in influx and on the move. And secondly, I want to say that we need the refugees, we need these people, because Europe needs populations that can speak with other worlds. We are now isolated in the rich countries, and we are isolated in a form of communication culture, and we need new populations that can communicate with the other world, because now there is a separation. If they are here, they will introduce economic activities, networks with societies of origins. They will organize also a new communication between religions, not only religions. Greece and other European countries can have the possibility to introduce a new cultural concept of how we communicate between Christianity and Islam and other religions. It is necessary. If we don't do this, we are lost. It takes perhaps 50 years and Europe to be an old-fashioned, with old people, very, very, very in decline. And I think we can see Europe with very positive eyes. Also with the eyes of Mohammed say, I come here because it's better, but he has to support this improvement of Europe. It's not only to joy, we have the joy of Europe, we have to support Europe to be better also. Okay, this is our invitation. I think this has to be a clear invitation, and cultural invitation, and religious invitation. I think, Apostles, you are very sensible on this, the issues of religions, and I think it is very important.
I am indeed.
Greece is in a very advantageous position in Iran, because as the patriarch said, we live with Islam for 400 years, so there is no other Christian segment that can understand Islam better than we do.
Yes, okay. Perhaps. Okay.
Thank you very much. We have now 35 minutes for coffee and something taste throughout here.